My name is Makeia Jackson. I've been doing GRC for some time now. I started out in the SOC and moved over into audit and compliance, where I was doing a little bit of PCI DSS, HIPAA, CJIS, which is the criminal justice compliance framework. Also was doing some vendor management, third party management risk assessment, as well as vulnerability scanning, physical security, which is probably like one of my favorites other than GRC, just because with physical security, I could always go to different locations and try to see how far I can get into some things. So that was really fun for me. And then I came over to the audit and compliance side, and that's where I started doing all the different parts of GRC, governance, risk, and compliance itself. I've been, for the last few years, I've been just solely focused on CMMC and everything that entails CMMC. So right now I'm working at C3 Integrated Solutions as a compliance consultant. And again, our focus is on CMMC. My role in CPN is the VP of Education. And so we're putting some things together so that we can make sure that we continue to build on the CMMC ecosystem, not just from a theory perspective, but also to understand how to implement these controls and these practice, these domains. What does it really entail? So that's what my goal is, my vision is to just make sure that we really truly understand what the intent of these controls are, and how to apply them from a technical standpoint. So with that said, since we don't have as many people on, I would love for us to go around the room and everyone introduce themselves. If we could go ahead and start out with Ahmed. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong.
Yes, I'm actually an IT project manager for cybersecurity and auditing. So
Okay.
my team works on basically submission the SSPs and stuff to the auditing teams. So I was just trying to figure out to do my own. So I just wanted to finish this exam, this CCP certified, so I can do my own practice.
Okay. Awesome.
That's all.
Great. All right, thank you. Anita, I don't know if I'm saying it right. I'm sorry.
It's Aneta. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. Yourself?
So I work in IT for 10 years now. Currently, I am the cybersecurity manager for a bank, and because it's small community bank, I play various roles such as vulnerability management, patch management, vendor management, project implementation, auditing too.
Okay. Okay, and so how long have you been, and I don't know if I missed if you said this or not, mentioned this or not. So how long have you been working with in the CMMC ecosystem?
I do not. I use like Microsoft tool because we have like a few framework to choose from. So I choose CMMC. So I'm trying to implement controls at the bank, even if we don't have to, but they are overlaps with different like sys controls, right? And NIST. So
okay. Thank you for sharing. David, you're next up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So yes, I currently am working in this cybersecurity architecture space. So we look at various different architectures based on, confidentiality, integrity, and so we look at that. We're doing currently some zero trust stuff as well. In a previous life, pretty much was a SPMO ISO for a couple of different systems. So did the whole ASCA control audit stuff, SSPs, FISMA. Security boundary definitions, and working with developers, engineers to make sure we can get our ATOs. So regarding the CMMC space, actually one of my vendors, he now does mostly FedRAMP, FISMA audits and stuff like that. But he kind of put the bug in my ear about CMMC like 4 years ago. And so I went to a couple conferences. I went to one recently at National Harbor. And so I kind of looked at it as, this is kind of the precursor to what's probably going to happen on the civil service side. With the DIB following the FAR. So we follow the FAR on the Fed side, they follow the DFAR. So I looked at it as maybe an opportunity to kind of expand my skills in the on the auditing side and just start off with the CCP and then maybe the assessment side. But, so that's kind of how I arrived here. I'm hopeful to try to take the CCP this year. So this is kind of what I'm joined the network. And actually, I met Darius through a different certification for a CISM. And I
Okay.
mentioned I mentioned CCMC, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm doing this." Is like several months back, so now this is
Okay.
kind of blown up with the network and stuff like that. So I had to learn, here to learn.
Awesome. Well, welcome, and thank you for attending this the second session of 4 sessions. This will be a recurring thing, so you can always come back if you need to. But we definitely want to, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that we're helping our ecosystem to not only be certified, but to make sure you understand how to apply these different controls. That's not something that we're going to go into too detail in this one, because that's more like with the CCA, but we'll definitely be covering on some things in here, like how to evaluate and what CMMC, CCP entails from a CCP perspective. Sorry about that. But again, welcome. Michael?
Yes, can you hear me? It's probably a little loud in the background. My co-share workspace. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
no. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Michael Council. I've been working in cybersecurity in one form or another. The early military, messed around with some small training enclaves. Ended up I SSM because nobody else wanted to touch it since it was mine. Working with ICAP and RMF, getting ATO. Then I retired, got my master's in cybersecurity. Did some third-party security work for a large bank, and soon thereafter, it was after I opened my company. So we've been open since 2019, and we've been working in the cybersecurity space, using GRC or Program and Project Management. I've been observing CMMC since its, early inception. Really, jumped in with 2 feet in the last year and a half. Recently finished up the CCT. And took the CCA class, so I'll be taking my test here soon, so I could be lead CCA soon. But I serve in CPN as a lead advisor for Prevail, so want to make sure I keep my skills up and
Yeah.
get some good training. So I'm here to support.
Thank you. And like Kobe always says, always good to go back to the foundations, because you can't ever go away from it. I always love referencing like Kobe when he talk about how the foundation is what got you where you at. So you always want to kind of go back to that at least every now and then, because I catch myself doing that as well. So I'll look at A+ and Security Plus, or just read some foundational material just to make sure that I don't miss anything, myself learning something new, or be like, oh, I didn't even realize that. I'm been in this industry for so long, whether it's cybersecurity or something else. I'm like, wow, I thought I knew a lot, but apparently I didn't. So it's always good to go back. So thank you for sharing. Lance, all right.
Yes, ma'am. I've been doing cybersecurity for the DoD for a very long time. Been doing it for even other companies like Disney before that. I have my CISSP. I do cybersecurity engineering. And really the compliance stuff I've done off and on, but really the CMMC stuff's really jumped out at me. And, that's a good path to go down. I've always worked for big companies, and I'm kind of thinking about breaking out on my own now. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I've been kind of waiting for a long time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Welcome, Lance, and thank you again for coming. I know me and you was chatting a little bit earlier, but like you said, it is definitely a good place to kind of break off if you were considering breaking off, especially with your experience, to break off and start your own. I know I've been, thinking about doing the same thing myself, and eventually. I don't know when, but eventually. But I'm glad that you're here. So thank you for coming. Hey, Clary, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. Good.
Did I say that okay? Did I say that right?
Yes, that is correct. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Could you introduce yourself to us? Since it's a small group, we were just gonna doing an introduction.
Yes. So I'm Clary, Director of IT for a medium-sized labor law and forensic consulting firm.
Okay.
We process a lot of sensitive data for a number of government entities, so we have to get level 2 certified. And just the more and more I started researching it, the more I saw an opportunity for myself to kind of bring a new practice here, especially because we already have cyber insurance and a lot of the things that we need. So, and we have to pay for the cert anyway.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome and thank you so much for joining. So I'm gonna go ahead. Did anyone have any questions for me before I start? No. Okay. So give me just a moment to share my. To share. Okay. Okay. Can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I just want to again say hello. Thank you so much for everyone joining. Again, my name is Makeia Jackson, and for this session, I'll be walking you through CMMC Domain 4, which is CMMC Model Construct and Implementation Evaluation. And this is going to be group study session 2 of 4. So we have 4 all together. One is going to be another one. I don't know if it's going to be the third one or the fourth one, but we also will be discussing scoping. I'm not going to be in that one, I don't think, and then I forgot what the last domain was. But all together we're going to go over the 4 was 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 domains. Sorry about that. The first 3 we're just discussing in the first session. I'm doing the second, and then it's going to be the third and fourth one. But in this one, basically what I'll be discussing is how to understand the model, how it's built, how to evaluate your cybersecurity practice, how to determine whether the right evidence is there to show a company is actually doing what it says it's doing. And so this domain is going to be a big deal. It's 35% of the CCP exam. It's the biggest and it weighs the heaviest of all 5 of the domains. So we'll be covering again how the model is structured, what the different levels mean, what the practices are, how to evaluate them, a full walkthrough of level 1 practices, and I'll be giving some real world examples of how to apply assessment methods and judge evidence. Again, this isn't something we're going to go super deep into because we only have an hour, but if you have any questions once we wrap it up, then I'm more than happy to stay on for a moment and answer any questions that you may have. I know you all have a lot of experience within the government, especially if you have NIST 853 experience, you'll pretty much have a solid understanding of NIST 800-171. So what is CMMC and why was it created? So CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and it was created by the Department of Defense, DoD, to ensure that contractors, subcontractors working in the DIB or defense industrial base are properly protecting the government information. Keep in mind that CMMC I'm going to say CMMC certification to validate that the laws that were already in place, such as NIST 800 FAR 52 that we'll be discussing in just a moment, are actually being done. Because before, organizations or DIB contractors were self-assessing and saying they were following these laws, following these rules, these regulations, when they really weren't. And so it was a lot of breach happening. And so this is the reason that CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, came about. So with that said, CMMC is based on existing contract rules such as the FAR 4-21 that requires 15 basic safeguards to protect the federal contract information, your FCI. Then you have your DFARS 252.204-7012, and it requires companies to follow NIST 800-171 for protecting CUI, which is your controlled unclassified information. And then you have your NIST 800-171A, which is what you're going to be assessing. So NIST 800-171 and NIST 800-171A are 2 different ones. NIST 800-171 is the assessment. That's where you're going to, an assessor will review and say, okay, this is what they're actually doing. They're following the specific objectives and they have met them or they have not met them. This SP 800-171, that's going to be your gold standard for protecting CUI. So that's your 110 security practices, covering things like your access control, your encryption, incident response, awareness training, and we'll go a little bit more intel with that. So the problem again was when companies were self-certifying without real enforcement. CMC came to create standard. I know many of you may have heard of Katie Arrington. She's the one that's behind it in the the person, and I forgot her role, a specific role. I think it was DOD CIO. And so a lot of people in the industry or in the DIB were either on one side that we need to go ahead and make sure that we're certified, or on the other side and saying, oh, it's not real. Now that it is real, it might go away. And so you may have been seeing in the news lately that Katie has said that, nope, that's not going to happen. So the real world example, a small manufacturer says they use antivirus and limit access, but they've never documented and no one verifies it. So under CMC, that's no longer going to be enough. You need to prove it. This organization, we're going to just say Acme, needs to prove it. And they're going to prove it by policies. They're going to prove it by laws, system settings, interviews. There's going to be, the assessor might even ask, hey, can you show me how to do that? And so that's where the shift comes in, is where for the CMMC is saying that you have a C3PL that is going, our third party that is going to verify this, but that's only at a level 2. Level 1, you can still self-assess. The CMMC model architect. The CMC model is built around, you're going to have 3 main components. You have your domains. There are 14 of them. These are going to be your high level categories, again, like your access control, your physical protection, incident response, your system and communication, system and integrity, your awareness training, personnel security. Those are all your domains. It's covering the overall umbrella. And then under that, you have your practices. And your practices, these are going to be those specific things that contractors must do to protect systems and data. And I'll go into more detail, like once I'll pull up some articles after we just go through the slide. I'm going to pull up and show you actually the like documentation and resources that you can review. And I'm pretty sure if you're going for your CCP or even just working on helping organizations certify, you probably already know this, but I'll also show it to you anyways. And then you have your assessment objectives. This again is going to be these break each practice into measurable parts. So this is where the assessors are going to review each one. Some of them have 1 objective, some of them may have 5, but altogether there's a total of 320 under level 2. So you have your 110 controls, then you have your 320 objectives, and all 320 of those have to have some kind of state implementation statement. There's not just where there's not applicable, and if it's not applicable, you can't just say it's not applicable. You need to provide a justification why it's not applicable. Then you have the practices themselves are pulled from FAR in NIST 800-171, depending on the level, as I mentioned before. So this is going to lead us right into the next big topic on what are the levels, making sure that you understand the CMMC levels. So there's going to be 3 levels. Previously, there were 5 levels, but now there are only 3 levels in CMMC 2.0, and they're cumulative. So what that basically means is, to qualify for level 2, you also need to make sure that you meet all level 1 requirements. So at level 1, that's going to be your foundational. There's no score is not required. There's either you either met the control or you did not meet the control. And level 1 is based off of FAR, and it is only designed to protect federal contract information. And that's going to include 17 practices. And we'll, again, go into a little bit more detail on that in some future slides. So again, that requires an annual self-assessment annually. So every year, if you're self-assessing at a level 1, then you'll have to do that annually. Level 2 is going to be your advanced level. That's based on NIST 800-171 revision 2. There is a revision 3 out, but right now CMMC is is based on revision 2. I know there's a lot of questions, or so I done heard questions where individuals want to be proactive and say, well, we should just go ahead and get, assess, excuse me, I couldn't think of the word. We should go ahead and assess our organization at revision 3, but there could be a problem because there's going to be some things that are that have been taken away that were in revision 2 that are no longer in revision 3. So it's best to go ahead and make sure you assess at a revision 2, and then if you want to kind of start being proactive and working at a revision 3, then you can go ahead. But at this point, there's no specific date and time on when revision 3 is going to be. I've been hearing, like, listening on LinkedIn, I've been seeing and hearing like maybe a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, maybe longer, maybe shorter. At this point, we just don't know. So level 2 is focused on protecting CUI, controlled unclassified information. And again, it includes 100 and 320 assessment objectives. Level 2, that's where again there's third-party assessment for there, and then your security requirements are valued at 1, 3, or 5 points in the range. So where level 1, there was no score, you only had to have met or not met, where at level 2, you're going to be scored. So again, those points are going to be 1, 3, or 5, and the score is going to be a range of negative 203, which is not good, to 110, saying that you fully met all of the requirements. You must have a minimum passing score of 88. There are some partial credit allowed for 2 requirements. So your MFA, your multi-factor authentication, there's 5 points deducted from overall score of the 110 if MFA is not implemented, or if it's implemented only for your general users and not remote and privileged users. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. But then for MFA, there's 3 points deducted if MFA is implemented for remote and privileged users, but not implemented for your general users. So MFA and FIPS are the only ones that have partial credit that is allowed. And so for the FIPS, 5 points are deducted from overall score of 110 if no cryptography is employed. And then FIPS, 3 points is deducted if cryptography is employed, but it's not FIPS validated. And then you can, I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's a site where you can identify if those twos are being FIPS. I know it's CM something, but I'll have to pull it up and I can share it on the LinkedIn, or can share it in a group so that you can actually know what site that is. I just can't think of it on top of my head right now. Then you have level 3, which is your expert level. That's based off of NIST 800-171. This will apply to contractors working with critical national security systems. So think of like Raytheon. Assessment will be conducted by the DoD itself, so that's DIBCAT, and all level 3 security requirements are valued at 1 point with a maximum score of 24, and it requires a prerequisite level 2 score of 110, again making sure that it's cumulative. Results for all levels are posted in SPURS and reviewed by contracting officers and require activities. So what's the anyone have any questions about what I said so far? I'm sorry, was crawling on me. Any questions? Okay. So what's the difference between FCI and CUI? Your federal contract information, FCI, again, is defined in FAR 52.20421. So federal contract information, FAR 52.204-21 says that information provided by or generated for the government under a contract to develop or deliver a product or service to the government that is not intended for public release. So FCI is not intended for public release. That's information that is generated for the government under a contract, or is being generated by the government under a contract to develop or deliver a product or service. And again, so it's unclassified information related to doing business with the government. So think of like your schedules, your invoices, quotes, internal communication via email. So it's sensitive enough not to be public, it's not as sensitive enough to where it has to be protected, like C. Now, CUI, controlled unclassified information, is defined in Executive Order 13 13556, 13556, and NIS 800 171. And executive order, trying to see. Thought I had the definition up here. So executive order says that information that requires safeguarding or dissemination controls pursuant to law, regulation, or government-wide policy. So it's basically saying CUI is sensitive, but it's not classified. So it's not top security, it's not secret, and it can include your technical data, legal information. You think about engineering drawings, data. You can think about some coding depending on how it's being transmitted and how it's being used could probably fall under CUI. This data is controlled by law, and it could be like data that's controlled by laws like HIPAA or ITAR. So FCUI, when you think of FCUI, federal contract information, is business with the government. When you think of CUI, your controlled unclassified information, think of sensitive data you're working on for the government. So bottom line, if you touch CUI, you need level 2 or higher. So if you hear the term handling CUI, that means that your process is being processed, stored, or transmitted in your system, whether that's going to be in your physical environment or it can be like in an enclave such as GCC High, Prevail, or some of those different environments. So practice format and your numbering. So each practice in the model is uniquely numbered. Up here on the screen, you see that it's AC. AC is going to be your access control. That's going to be your domain. You might see PS. That's going to be your personnel security. That's going to be the domain. Then L1, that's the level. You'll see access control L1, or you can see access control L2 or L3. That's just the different levels that it is. It identifies the level. And then 3.11, that's going to be tied directly to the NIS 800 171 control. Every practice is going to include a title, it's going to include a description, and it's going to include an assessment objective, which are going to be used to determine if it's fully implemented. And the assessment objectives, again, are going to be in alignment with NIS 800 171A. So these objectives are what you'll use when you're evaluating or preparing for an assessment. All right, so you have 3 different assessment methods. Also, well, I call them EIT, and I done heard it in the industry, but I don't know how popular it is, but EIT. So EIT is going to be used to assess whether a practice is implemented. You use the EIT method. You have examine. That's where you're going to look at documents. You're going to look at logs, settings, policies, diagrams, things like that. Interview, you're going to be talking and speaking. You're going to be interviewer. You're going to talk to the person that's like the responsible owner. You're the admin who's going to be responsible for that specific practice or control or that assessment objective. And you're wanting to interview that individual to see what their process and their procedure is to make sure that that specific practice is being met. And then you have tests. Testing is going to be how you observe the control in action. So you might have an assessor that say, hey, pull up your screen and let me see which one I want to think of. I'm trying to think of one I want to pick. Your lockout. Password lockout. And it's your documentation, and the interviewer may say, okay, the document might say, well, we only give our users 3 chances. After 3 chances of putting a incorrect password, then it's gonna lock out. And then the assessor say, let me see. Then the system admin or whomever is responsible for that specific configuration or making sure that configuration is placed, they'll actually perform it. And if it locks out at 4 or 5 or doesn't lock it out at all, then that's a fail, because now in your documentation you said that it locks out at 3, but it hasn't locked out, or it locked out at 4 or 5. So it's not in alignment with what your documentation said or with what the person responsible owner has said during that interview. There are some times where assessors will give you the option. I can't remember if it was 3 to 5, but they'll give you a chance to fix certain practices control, but you'll go more into detail on that when you get to your CCA on how that is actually implemented. So another example is like with anti-malware software. Examine, is it installed? Is it running? Does your documentation say that you have anti-malware software in place? Interview, you're going to ask your IT admin, how does your anti-malware software gets updated? And then the assessor might say, hey, run a scan and let's watch it work and see how it does. So you don't always need, all three methods are not gonna necessarily be used, but using at least using two methods helps build a stronger confidence. So the CMMC assessment guide will tell you which methods apply to each practices. And again, if you haven't reviewed the assessment documentation, I'm gonna show you that, where it shows, like, give you examples of like evidence that you can use for each one of these exam and interview or the test. All right, so level 1 practice walkthrough. You have 17 level 1 practices. You need these for any contract with FCUI. So that's at level 1. So up here at the screen, let me see, my mouse is not working. Oh, there you go. So this is going to be your domain. Identification, authentication, your domain. Media protection, that's your domain. Access control, IA, that's going to be the title or your level 1, and this is going to be your identifier at these ones. At access control level 1, 3.11 is saying authorized access control. So in layman terms, they are saying only authorized users can access your system. 3.12 transaction and functions control is going to be, again, your title. It's just saying users can only do what their role allows them to do. 3.120 external connections. This is saying restrict external connections. So you only want to allow those external connections that you need. So if you have like GCC High, I have clients that are working through their SharePoint with some external individuals, or they working from B2B. So they have to get that approved, and we have to make sure that we document that those external connections are available to them. So they're working with client A and client B. They have guest links. They're able to access their SharePoints, whether that's for a short time limit or they have full access. So you want to make sure that you restrict your external connections. 3.122 control public information. That's just saying don't post FCI publicly. At a level 2, it's saying don't post CUI publicly. And then it'll go into more details. There's different level. We're not going to go into the specific objectives on this session, since it's only an hour, but there's going to be some objectives that fall under that just says make sure that you have processes in place, you have procedures, do you have documentations, and you're going to prove, I got a documentation. This is our process on making sure that we have a process to review our FCI before we post to our LinkedIn or our website. Then, so these are kind of things that you want to look at. So don't let a contractor's Gmail be your data backup. No shared Dropbox links for your FCI. Identification and authentication. So 351. Identification, users must be uniquely identified. That's what that one is saying. And then 3.5.2, authentication is saying your users must be authenticated. They're two different things. So no shared admin logins. Even the front desk has a unique account. And then you want to make sure that your account from day-to-day and privilege or admin accounts are separated. They're not using the same accounts. Sorry about that. Sorry, it's a fly. Media 3.8.3 media disposal. So your media disposal, that's just saying that you're sanitizing media before it's being disposed, whether that's a USB drive, whether that's your laptop. You want to just make sure that it's sanitized properly, and you can review NIST 800, identify the proper procedures or proper ways to sanitize media before it's being disposed. So you want to shred your old USBs, white drives before donating a laptop. Physical protection, 310.1 is saying limit who can access, like your servers. 310.3, make sure that you're escorting your visitors at all times. I know I was working with a client and it was just like, well, we have our maintenance guy who is, or he's a plumber coming in and fixing, and we don't want to just be with them all the time. We don't have time to be watching them, and their shop floor is CUI. Somebody has to be with them at all times. Or like I told in his situation, because it's an open floor, it's just make sure that somebody eyes on that person at all times and you can see them within your space. And so we're able to get past that because they can see them, and it's everybody is a lot of people, individuals on the shop floor, so we can't just get to something without them seeing him doing whatever it is that he's doing. 3.10.4, make sure you keep logs of who enters. So a sign-in roster, make sure that you keep that, make sure that you maintain it. If in your policies documentation, make sure that you're documenting your frequency. How long are you maintaining these documents? Or if you have a badge reader, make sure that you're still keeping those audit logs, 3.10.5, revoke access when someone leaves. So that's making sure if they're terminated, then you want to make sure that you're revoking that access properly. Don't leave your server room doors propped open. You want to make sure that you're following all of those, managing your physical access. Any questions about those controls? All right. System and communication protection. 3.13.1, boundary protection. This is using your firewalls, segmentation, making sure you have those different safeguard controls in place. 3.13.5, public access system separation, making sure you separate your internal systems from your public systems. Don't host the company website on the same server as where your sensitive files is, for example. System and information integrity. 3.14.1, flaw remediation. That's just identifying, making sure that you identifying and fixing your system flaws. 3.14.2, malicious code protection, making sure you protect your system against malware of any sort. 3.4, update malicious code protection, keep malware tools up to date. And then 3.14.5, systems and file scanning, making sure that you scan your systems regularly. So don't rely on Windows Defender default. Make sure that you're configuring it correctly, scanning correctly, and make sure that you're logging your information, making sure that you have those change management, configuration managements and logs somewhere so that you can, if you need to revert back, then you know where you was last. All right. Evaluating evidence. So how do we know the evidence is good evidence? Good evidence is adequate and sufficient. You're going to hear that a lot, especially when you get to CCA. They key in on adequacy and sufficiency. Adequate means it matches the objective. So if it says identify your users that have access to your environment on a C, then you want to make sure that you have like a list of all those individuals who are authorized to have access to your environment, making sure, and so it just depends on the objective. So sufficient, more than just a screenshot. Can you prove it? Do you have your screenshot? Do you have your list? Can you actually show me that you have a GPOs in place? So making sure that you have a sufficient amount of information to prove that you're meeting these practices. Current within your defined review window. So making sure that you're up to date. And if you say that it's reviewed in a year, make sure that you review it, make sure that it's documented, verifiable. You can trace it to a system. So making sure that you have those audit logs in place. Bad evidence. Saying we do that with nothing to back it up. So you say that we don't just show a policy that says, say for instance, we use antivirus. You want to show the logs. You want to show the configuration. You want to show your user awareness on the screenshots from 3 years ago, policies that no one follows. You don't want to, those are bad evidence, examples of bad evidence or characteristics of bad evidence, I should say. Okay, so I know, like I said, I went through this document PowerPoint kind of fast. Just didn't want to just sit here and be reading a PowerPoint. So to bring it all together, CMMC was created to enforce existing cybersecurity rules such as NIST 800-171, your DFARS, your FARS laws. The model includes your domains, such as your access control, awareness training. Then you have your practices on what you need to do, and then you have your assessment objectives that are aligned with NIST 800-171A. You have 3 levels. You have your level 1, which is for LCI. Level 2 is for CUI, and then you have your level 3. That's the more advanced or expert levels, such as, again, Raytheon. Assessment uses the EIT method: examine, interview, and test. So examine, review, and documentation. Interview, talking to the responsible owner for that specific domain or practices. And then testing, saying, hey, pull up your configurations, let me review them and see if you have the right GPOs in place, your policies are the right policies are set, or you have the right, if like say for instance, users or accounts are disabled, and if you say you do it in 90 days, it matches your SOPs or your policies and procedures, making sure all that is in alignment. Evidence must be strong, it must be sufficient, it must be provable, it must be enough. You want to make sure that you have adequate and sufficient. You're going to constantly hear that word, those 2 words, adequacy and sufficiency. So making sure that they're adequate and sufficient. And don't forget, you want to make sure that you keep in mind that domain 4 is 35% of your CCP exam. And so again, this is the heaviest one. So you want to make sure that you go in more details and understanding of the inside and out of this specific domain. With that said, I'm going to end this slide and pull up some oops, I didn't mean to do that. Before I start sharing some other documentations, do anybody have any questions, concern on, and I'm going to get to the your question.
Yeah, how long did it take you to prepare to take your exam? Like, what was your runway? What was your approach? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to share that with you in just a moment, because I'm going to show some stuff that I use when it came to that. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to pull it up. I'm going to trying to drop these other 2 here as well. Okay, so this is one of the tools that I use, Pocket. Can y'all see? I just want to make sure I can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. So this is one of the tools that I use. I use Pocket Prep. One of the things that I liked about Pocket Prep is that it allowed you to do the level up. I really like the level up. And so for me, it shows each one of the different domains in CMMC. So you have your CMMC ecosystems, the professional conduct, governance, and source documents. Those 3 were covered. These 3 right here were covered in session 1. This is the one that we covered. Then the cap is going to be the next one, and then scoping. I just use I use Pocket Prep's level up, and I just went through all of them. I done reset it, so that's why it seemed like I haven't did anything. But this really, really helped me. When I went through the exam, I noticed that Code of Professional Conduct was very heavy. Ecosystem, like the first 3 were actually very heavy on my exam when I went through the exam. That was a year, 2 years ago, I want to say. Actually 3. Yeah, because it's time for me to get ready to do it again. Do my CCA. I have my CCA. I'm sorry about that. Before I did my CCA, it was about to be up. So that's why I took my CCA. But this is what I use. I use Pocket Prep. And I also use some flashcards that were on Quizlet, but I don't know where they're at. I was trying to look for them, but the good thing about it is that we had someone on our team that created some Quizlets. And so I'm going to share all of these links with you. I'm trying to get to the chat. Let me share the links. Yes, I'm going to have to do it like this then. Okay, so the links that I'm sharing with you right now, those are going to be for flashcards that we created in Quizlet that you can also use. And we got 1 per domain, so I'm just sharing them all with you if you want to save them. Governance, is that one taking? Okay, just trying to make sure. And I see some questions in the group chat. I'm gonna get to those in just a moment. I just want to make sure I share these out before I forget, because I will forget. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's for the cap. And then we have actual scoping. The pocket prep is like 20 some dollars. I think it's worth it because I use pocket prep for not only my I use it for my CCA as well. It's 500 questions for the CCP. And what I normally do, say for instance, I use the Quizlet, I use the level up, and one of the other things that I do, I have like a Anki. Sorry about that. I have an Anki, and so say for instance, I answered a question wrong. For instance, I'm just gonna pick an answer. So like for instance, if I got an answer wrong, I like pocket prep because it also give you like it'll give definition. So I would do something like highlight this and put it in Anki and make that an additional card as well, or you can put it in Quizlet. So by time I had used Quizlet, pocket prep, and made the questions that I didn't get right, a question in Anki, like I was prepared. There was no reason for me to not be prepared in there. So recommended findings, and it just go in detail. And it also, I like about pocket prep, it'll give you the reference as well, and so it gives you the link to it also, so you can get that information also. Let me see, I seen somebody ask me a question. So for what should you study, make sure you follow. One of the things I can say about the CCPA and the CCA is that if you follow the blueprint, exactly what it said, what it provides you, the information that it give you, then you're gonna be fine. Like it's everything on that blueprint specifically. What's the difference between practices and controls? So when you think of your controls, those are going to be your safeguards or countermeasures to prevent, and then your practices is what you demonstrate. So let me pull up the CMMC assessment guide. Sorry about that. Okay, are you able to see the document?
Yes.
Okay, so your practice is going to be telling you what you need to do. So ensure, this is your description, but I also call my practice, you're ensuring that managers, system admins, and users of your system, your enclave of your physical environment is made aware of the security risk. So they're making sure that whatever activity that they're doing when it comes to your CUI on this specific is CUI, because this is at a level 2. You're wanting to make sure that you identify those risks and making sure that your users are identified. So this is going to be a practice. This is what you're doing. I'm doing this specific thing. I'm ensuring that my managers understand the risk. Your assessment objectives, these are going to be all the ones that are they're on your they're in the assessment guide, and they're gonna be in here as well. But what you really want to do is make sure that you go to when you're assessing your objectives and want to get a better understanding of them, go to NIST 800, look at NIST 800 171A for how to assess them. Because a lot of times people always say NIST 800 171, but they're not really understanding that you have to, when you're doing an assessment, you want to follow it, and it's in alignment with it. Let me see the procedures. My screen not working. My screen is blank. Interesting. I know. Okay, try again. It's not showing. Maybe I have to just show you this 800 171A revision 3. This is revision 3. Don't follow this, but for some reason revision 2 is not working out. It's not. So it looks a little different. I don't want to confuse anybody, but it looks a little different. The only thing with revision 3 is that it also requires ODPs. That's your parameters. So it's requiring you to be more detailed on like wanting you to define those frequencies, or what are you doing, how often are you doing it. And so if you're saying that you're doing awareness training, how often are you doing it? Are you doing it annually? Are you doing it monthly? Are you doing it quarterly? If you're saying that you're disabling your counts, how often are you doing those? So it's requiring it more in revision 3. I really hate that I can't show you revision 2 NIST 800 178. I don't know why. It's not saving. Let me see if I got one on my computer. 320 objectives. So there's 110 practice. You have your 110 practice with your 320 self-assessment objectives. That's the one I was trying to show in this 800 171A, but it's not showing. And I don't know why it's not showing. Let me try one more time. Maybe let me stop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to find it, and I'm going to share the documentation once I can get it to see. I don't know why it's not working. And I have everybody's name in here. So I'll have to send it to you because I don't know why it's not showing up in here right now. Because right now we're still using it. Okay, maybe it is going. Maybe it's just going. I don't know. I don't know why it's not showing. I'm trying to see what. So did anyone else have anything? Should we set exactly for the domain 4? And let me pull up CCP blueprint. So this is going to be the CCP. This is the official blueprint. You want to follow this one right here. It says the CMMC professional CCP test. Blueprint. This is the one that you're wanting to make sure that you're following. I'm gonna share that as the PDF. So in our situation, in domain 4, as you can see, these are all the domains in 35. CMMC model construction implementation evaluation is going to be weight 35%, and the cap is going to be weight very heavy. Even though I said earlier that I had more 1, 2, 3 on mine, but these are definitely going to weigh heavy. Now, when you get to domain 4, you have what we went over, the model architecture, the levels, cumulative nature. That's just saying that if you're at a level 2, you also need to make sure that you're meeting level 1 requirements. If you're level 3, you need to make sure that you're meeting level 1 and level 2 requirements. You don't need to really necessarily know about level 3 levels required for specific contracts. It's going to be level 1 and level 2. So really only thing you need to know about that level 1 is FCUI. That's your federal contract information. And then your level 2 is your CUI. Your practices description, practicing number scheme. So that's where I was showing you earlier, where you have your access control, your ARAC level 1 3.11. That's the practice numbering scheme. So that's how it's your AC dot level 1 dot 3.1.1. Your objectives, that's your assessment objectives, the ones that I was speaking of, trying to show you earlier in the NIST 80171 document, but it's not showing. But it's the same in this document right here. These are going to be your objectives. Determine if, when an assessor reviews your environment, they're going to look at determine if security risks associated with organizational activities involving, in this situation, because it's level 2, are identified, but for level 1, it'll say involving FCUI are identified. Do you know all the risks within your environment when it comes to identifying level 1? Do you have a policy, some kind of documentation in place, policy, plans, procedures, policies? That's your what. What is my organization doing? Your plan, how are we going to do it, or how are we doing it? And then your procedures. What are the steps that you're taking to make sure that that your what and your how and your policy and your plan are being met? Manager system and the user of the system are made aware of the security risks associated with that activity. Making sure all these individuals understand when they're working on doing their day-to-day job, that they understand the risks that come about with those specific roles. So, and then this is where I was telling you earlier, potential assessment methods. So you have your examine, your interview, and your test. You don't have to remember any of this by heart, but you want to be able to know the difference. So they may say security or risk assessment, individual provided a security awareness training policy. What method will you review? What method is a security awareness training policy or something like that? It's been a while that I took the test, but you'll say examine. If they're saying we're going to talk to somebody, or we're talking to HR and the IT team about your security awareness, because you know that they're interviewing. And then if they say if they go out and they ask some of your individuals on the shop floor about insider threat, then there'll be testing to see if you really are providing your individuals security awareness training. Even if they're on the shop floor and they don't have an email, they still need to be able to understand the risks in their environment if they're working with LCI or CUI. So just because they don't have an email doesn't mean that they're going to be on a exception list. You still have to have some kind, even if you're doing a classroom briefing or having posters posted around, and then have us sign off on a documentation, like a sign off roster, and they're acknowledging. They still need to make sure that they're acknowledging. And then you have your discussion points to help you better understand the specific requirements for the domain. So this is going to be your domain. This is going to be your, can't even think. So this is your practice and numbering that documentation was referencing. Pull up the blueprint so we can look at it and close some of this stuff out. I got too much stuff open now. Document go. There you go. So practicing numbering scheme, that's here. Then your objectives. This is your objectives all right here. Assessment methods and objective. That's going to be your examine, interview, and your test, and just kind of understanding what falls under each one of them. You don't have to memorize any of these. Remember any of them, just make sure that you understand them. So when you look at the domains here, you're going to see some actually lay out the actual controls under the domain. That's the requirements. That's because these are the ones that's important. The ones like audit and accountability, awareness and training, configuration management, incident response, maintenance, personnel security, risk assessment, security assessment. All of those are going to be under level 2. So those aren't the ones you want to understand the intent of those. But you don't need to know in detail. You don't even have to remember these. You just want to understand the intent of each one of them. So access control, you want to authorize access control, make sure that you understand who has access to your environment, transaction and function, as I said before, making sure that your users who are authorized to access FCUI, that they identify their response of what they can and they can't do. So the ones that are laid out like this, these are the ones that you want to focus on and make sure that you understand each one of them. You don't have to, you don't have to remember anything. It's not going to say like PE level 1, 3.10.1, what is that? And you have to remember limit physical access. It's not going to ask you anything like that. Or it didn't ask me. I don't know. It may change. Michael, did you have anything like that on your exam or something similar?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Okay. So they done changed it up. The test is 150 questions. It's very wordy. So make sure you get some sleep and make sure you just go through these questions and practice them. But they'll give you enough information. One thing I can say is if you really understand what the intent of these are, they're going to give you enough information so that you can understand what the difference is between them. Apply knowledge of the CMMC assessment criteria and methodology to the appropriate CMMC practice, the definition of each practice. So making sure that you understand these, know what these are for these. The assessment objectives, making sure you understand what is asking you. So the intent. So if someone asks you, how do you identify that individual? Then you're wanting to say, oh, I add them I do these specific steps. I make sure that when it comes to hiring a person, from personnel security, I'm making sure that they're U.S. citizen. And then we identify these specific things. And then once we've done that, we have a grouping of individuals. If they're a manager, we make sure that all our managers follow this specific training that's going to be in line with your awareness training. And then something just slipped my mind. I was about to say, I think I can't recall what I was about to say when it comes to that. So the assessment method, examine, interview, and test to use for the practice. What information to look for in your practice discussion. It goes in more detail here. So this will give you more information on what it's looking for so that you can better understand the intent of the control as well as what the objectives are looking for. The key references and their applicability to the practice, navigating using this assessment guide content. Each of you should be, if you're, before you take the test, you go through some training. And in that training, they will give you the oldest are training, because right now, even there's new training out, we're not Keiko has not updated that information other than the Delta. So you'll take your CCB training, and during your training, they'll give you the oldest documentation so that you'll be able to have the proper information and the proper material, excuse me, that's the word I was looking for. And so determine the assessment methods that would be best for gathering sufficient and accurate evidence, making sure that you understand this 800-171, because this is going to help you to determine the assessment methods and what information that it is actually looking for. Task 3, analyze the adequate sufficiency around the location, collection, quality, use of evidence. Appraised evidence is adequate. So does it match the objective? If I say that if it says that identify your user, then is it identifying your user? Measure if the evidence is sufficient. Is it enough to prove that you're identifying your user? So that's what it's asking. So that's all that I have. Was there any questions that anyone have? I think I went through and looked at all of the questions, and I'll share all this information, the data or the resources that I have. I don't know if I shared I shared the print already. So I can mark out of that. Any questions, concerns, anything that somebody wanted to add?
Yeah, I just think you hit it on the head. They have to make sure they're studying the right blueprint, because they don't want the updated one, because that's not the stuff they're testing on.
Right.
That's why after you take the test, you'll end up taking something called Delta training, which means the difference between what actually is happening out in the wild versus what you were tested on. So just make sure when you're focused on the right training material, you get that done, and then you can shift over. Right after you take your test, you have a requirement to take the Delta training, and you take a quick test. And if you score a suitable, if you get, I can't remember what the required score is.
5%, I think. I think it was, and you can find that information on Cyber AB. It'll tell you, and again, you'll get the right information, because whatever trainer that you go through, they'll provide you with the right information. Because Keiko, from my understanding, town hall I went through, they haven't even completed the training yet. So yeah, the Delta training is $100. So you pay $100 Delta test enrollment fee. You'll receive 2 test attempts. If you do not pass after the 2 attempts, you will need to re-enroll for Delta and pay $100 again for 2 additional attempts. So this is for anyone who has passed your CCP and or your CCA. So you don't have to take both of the tests. You can just, if you take the CCP and you're done with that, you still want to make sure that you take the Delta training exam, and that's going to update you to the latest or newest information that's on the DOD or CMMC. For that CMMC resources that you go to that's currently out there, that's going to be the latest and the most update information. So that's not what you want to study. So this right here, this information right here, this is going to be the latest documentation, and this is not what you want to, this isn't what you want to study, because if you study this information, it's not going to be on a test. It's similar, but there's some things that has changed, such as like the practice numbering and some other things has changed on it. So you want to make sure that you go through that training, and when you go through the training, your instructor or your trainer will give you the proper documents to the current test that is out. And then you'll just take your Delta training on top of that to update you to this. And it says you will need to achieve a score 75% or above to pass the Delta test. It is open book, and it says once you've passed the Delta test, your profile will indicate your successful completion. I haven't taken a Delta test. I'm going to take it sometime this week. This week I was thinking about taking it this weekend, but I haven't taken it yet. Other than that, I don't have anything else to share with you. If y'all have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will make sure that this information is updated and I'll share the information. And y'all have a good night.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Good night,
welcome.
everyone.
Thank you.